possibly the most frightening woman to big tech, and the EU Commissioner. You fined Google, you've chased Ireland over Apple's tax bill. Now you've announced an early-stage probe into Amazon. And I wondered what the aim of that was. I know you're keen to stress that you want to encourage investment, but what exactly are you looking at on Amazon?
Well, Amazon is it's a two-sided market. They have dual functions. They both host the little guy, so he can enter into e-commerce. They provide a number of services, which allows also smaller businesses to be active e-commerce and to grab the opportunities, and that's great. They're also a big guy themselves. Bookstore, you know, everything. Groceries, movies, the works. And they, of course, get all the data from the little guy, and we want to understand how this data is being used. Because this is all about competition. Because when we say innovation, well, competition is the most important driver for innovation, for you to stay ahead of your competitor.
And do you think the future is a bit like telecoms companies, or maybe what happened with Microsoft many years ago, where you have a platform company which is then forced to let other people trade and have access to that platform?
Well, I think that's very difficult to say, because as it was just said in the video, this is a revolution. Things change, and we haven't even seen what is coming with quantum computing, blockchain, sort of really pulling off. So we probably have a platform economy that's much more diverse than what we have seen, which is why, of course, it's important for us to understand, well, what is the new big? How are companies that benefit from networks effects, from huge amounts of data, from marginal costs approaching zero, how do they compete? And for us, that, of course, is the important thing.
Do you think, in some ways, competition law has been left behind by big tech? You have these companies where you talked about network effects. It is very difficult to intervene until after they have created these, I suppose, near monopolies, as some people would see them.
Well, I think our principles are fine, because they are about human nature, and we don't change, unfortunately. With all our good sides and bad sides, I think we remain the same. But of course, in the regulation, we need to stay alert, because you can be big. In Europe, you can be successful, but you shouldn't misuse your power. This is actually the story of the two Google fines. Very successful, very welcome in Europe, but we find that they misuse their power for competitors not to be as innovative as they ought to, for consumers not to be able to enjoy the benefits of choice, innovation, affordable prices. And that, of course, is where we have to be very, very vigilant.
But isn't the Google thing an example of what I just said? You know, it took you 7 years. In tech, 7 years is a lifetime.
Yes, part of that is part of the game, because there is an asymmetry in every kind of law enforcement. Because in another example, it takes 5 minutes to break into your home. It will take the police and the court system quite some time to find the guilty person, to get him or her convicted and put away.
Hopefully not 7 years. I don't know.
No, but you still have responsibility to due process. Because we live in a union based on the rule of law, and we will never, ever compromise on your right to defend yourself. That being said, of course, we can use algorithms too. We can too use all the tools of a digital world in order for us to be more speedy.
Do you think tech firms have simply become too big in some cases?
No, I don't think as such that you can make that conclusion, but I think they can be much more transparent. My colleagues have made, I think, very, very good proposals to ensure transparency in the relationship between the smaller business and the platform. And that, I think, is very much needed. The transparency, the willingness actually to deal with people, and to be much more sort of clear that they respect your privacy, your ownership of your own data, so that we as citizens feel that we can build trust with technology.
And do you think privacy is an area where the EU could take a lead?
Well, I think the rights that are now much more clear, that you own your data, that you have a right to be forgotten, that you have a right to know what is out there with you, that you have portability so you can move your data. I think in not only having the rules, but also implementing the rules. Of course, this is something that's important for us as Europeans. And we do hope that we can inspire around the world, because I think that respect of the citizen is what builds trust.
But you know what some people in this audience will think, especially Americans. They will think, look, Europe doesn't have any big tech companies, or certainly not on the scale that America does, and now China, as we will shortly see. And this is Europe just trying to pull back America. Do you think what is your answer to that suspicion?
Well, I think the reason why business are in Europe is because they do very good business. And you see a number of the US companies, they are dominant in the European markets, and they're more than welcome to be that. And when you look at our tax probes, because you're more than welcome as a European member states within or outside of the Union to set your own level of corporate taxation. But you're not supposed to hand out specific favors. That be to Apple or to Starbucks or to some of the European companies where we've seen that happen as well. It's not about your flag. It's not about whether you're privately or publicly owned. It's about your competitive spirit. You're supposed to compete for your business in Europe.
And when you look at these new cases you're taking on, do you look back to old cases like IBM many years ago or Microsoft, and try and see those as sort of, I suppose, inspiration for this? Are there lessons you can learn from past periods of antitrust?
I think there's an important lesson about speed, as you just said. Because if things take forever, then it's not the antitrust enforcement that sort of makes sure that what we do as authorities leave sufficient room for all the many businesses who compete by the book, who do their best with skilled employees trying to make it in the marketplace. They should know, of course, that justice is sufficiently fast for them to enjoy a competitive marketplace.
Do you think there's something different about technology with government, though? You look at other industries and government can leave them alone. In these sort of industries, there is a tendency, as you said, because of network effects, towards having monopolies, towards having that form of effect. And so in some ways, government needs to rethink.
I think in order to be able to do that, we have to work with the fact that everything digitalizes. Agriculture, health, administration, everything digitalizes. So if you want to accommodate and make a good business environment for that, of course you have to be able to understand it. And this is why the partnership with business in order how to get that right. That's important for us. That's important for governments.
One very quick last question, purely because you mentioned it earlier and Theresa May did it. She talked about Britain now having the lowest corporation tax. Do you think that is a good way to negotiate with the European Union?
Well, it doesn't change much, because also within the Union, in the very basic treaties, as a member state, you have the right to set your level of corporate taxation. That you can do within the Union or outside of the Union. What we don't want within the Union is that member states puts money in one business pocket, not allowing anyone else to have the same thing, because that's not fair competition. But on the level of corporate taxation, you can compete within and without the European Union.